Okay, guys, we're going to talk through the Great War and get through a couple of sections here, just understanding a little bit about the background and how we got to a global war, or at least what most of the world refers to as global war. So we're going to begin here talking about the reasons for promise that we thought things were going well and eventually led to outbreak of one of the most devastating wars that the world had seen up to that point. And so here we are, World War I. We're going to begin with some reasons for hope. As you remember, a couple of chapters ago, we had talked about the progressive idea, or the idea that we could make society better through social programs. And that was really the mindset of most of the people of this day. And so there were lots of things put into governments and put into the social order that tried to eliminate the problems that they saw, and therefore a lot of people were taken off guard by the outbreak of this war because they thought life was getting better. They thought man was getting better. And some examples of this, we can see some international cooperation that's happening. A couple of things that would be important for you to include in here and to take note of. One of those areas is the Red Cross. Of course, that is a symbol of peace and a symbol of cooperation today, as they're very heavily involved in many global events that global catastrophic events, basically to provide medical care and assistance for those in need, especially when there's a major disaster. Well, the Red Cross was founded here by Jean-Henri Dunant. His last name is D-U-N-A-N-T. He was French, and he saw the need here for a cooperation of multiple countries for the humanitarian good and assistance of people in need. There was also improved communications among the nations, and so many people believed with the invention of the telegraph as well as the postal system that leaders of these nations would be able to communicate much more effectively without having to go to war, and perhaps even stop some of these wars before they began. There was also the revival of the Olympic Games in 1896, as that brought many nations together that had not necessarily had a whole lot of interaction for a long time, or maybe perhaps even ever. 1896 was the kickoff of the modern Olympic Games, and this was a huge celebration of what people thought was a time of peace, and people believed that life was getting better. And so there were also two men who were very heavily involved in international efforts at promoting peace. One of them was Alfred Nobel, or Nobel, and he was the inventor of dynamite. Now, you may think, well, isn't there a Peace Prize named after him? Yes, absolutely. But he created what we know today as dynamite, and he was so taken back and devastated by how powerful and destructive this invention was that he spent the remainder of his life trying to promote peace so that nobody would ever have to use it in a war or in a way to be destructive. And so he established the Nobel Peace Prize in an effort to honor those that further the advancement of peace, and that is still something that's given out today. We also have Andrew Carnegie. He was an American who he was famous for manufacturing steel in the United States, and much of his steel went throughout a good part of the world. He made a ton of money off of that. You may recognize Carnegie Hall in New York City, and it was named after him because he donated the money toward that particular building, as well as hundreds of other structures throughout the United States and even all over the world, where he tried to promote learning and peace. And he built these type of places as a gathering place and a celebration of the fine arts and a celebration of humanity's greatest achievements. And so he was an incredible philanthropist who spent most of his fortune, or as much as he could, on benefiting others. He was not one of those who hoarded his money. He definitely spread that through what he could toward others and made life better for them. Now, unfortunately, there were some reasons for fear and concern as we lead up to this war. We begin with the idea of extreme nationalism. We talked about this a couple of chapters ago, where nationalism was a love for one's country, an attitude where you are going to do everything for the benefit of your homeland, and you are going to put the nation ahead of your own personal desires. Well, there starts to be an idea of extremism that goes along with this, where this is an unhealthy patriotic love for your country, where you are doing very extreme things such as resorting to violence, threats, doing all kinds of things that would not be considered normal. And so this starts to be promoted and starts to rise up, especially in Europe. We also have the idea of chauvinism, that's spelled Chauvinism. This is what you have as an uncontrolled or unbridled nationalism, where this person is just out of control, and that's more of the extreme side of things. And your whole goal here with nationalism, especially in this extreme form, is that you're trying to prove your superiority over somebody else, that you are better than them for one reason or another. We also have the influence of militarism. And the main philosophy here is that you are going to try to prove how great you are, prove your power through the size of your military. And that is where you're going to put as much finances into that and building it up so that the world can see that you are strong, and you better not come mess with you as a country because you have so much military there. And we've just come through talking about imperialism, where you are showing your power through your domination and control of other countries. You are going to take advantage of them. You are going to have control, both political and sometimes militarily, sometimes even socially. You are going to dominate them, and they're going to have to pledge their allegiance. They're going to have to submit to your rules in this arrangement. And this is where we have a lot of colonies established all over the world. We talked about India. Africa certainly was a big one. Even you can look at certain parts of Southwest Asia would have been involved in that as well. And then we also have the alliances that often are built up and begin to create rivalries. In these alliances, there's an agreement between these countries to come to your aid if somebody is attacked within that alliance group. And so it's like an all for one and one for all type of mentality. If one is attacked, then everybody else rallies around them and they're going to come to their support, and they're going to jump into a war and defend them in these alliances. And a lot of these were started up because of distrust among the European countries. They had people that they believed were telling them the truth. They also had other countries that they believed were lying to them. And so they wanted to team up with those that had similar viewpoints in politics, economics, and society. And so many of them were secretive because they did not want somebody else to know about them. And that just led to more distrust. And so we see a few steps here building toward war. First of all, we need to look at the Bismarck system. This is going into Germany, and Germany began initiating alliances with a number of other European countries. And we briefly talked about the Franco-Prussian War that Bismarck was heavily involved in. And of course, as we talked about him a couple chapters ago, he was pretty manipulative with the way that he came to power and also promoted Germany and helped them rise to a nation. And so for that reason, France was pretty fearful of what Germany might do next and really didn't trust what Bismarck was doing. And so because of the fact that Germany was making all these behind-the-scenes moves, France was really skeptical. They weren't sure exactly what was going to happen. The dual alliance is an agreement here between Germany and Austria-Hungary. You can see there on the map where those countries lie, and you can see the formation of some of the opposing teams that are eventually going to lead into the Great War. So Germany and Austria-Hungary are now allied together. This is an agreement between those two. And again, France is sitting over there a little bit nervous because they're not sure what Germany is going to do next. And the Triple Alliance is formed when they pull Italy into this agreement. So we now have Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy as a part of that. And all three of them have very different views on life and politics than France. And France made a whole lot of enemies back during the reign of Napoleon. And now it's almost as if all these other European countries are ganging up against France, and France is sitting there a little bit by themselves. And France then goes to their closest neighbor, I wouldn't say ally, because France and England have very often been on opposite sides of battles. But they go to Great Britain and they say, can you help us? We need your help. And for the time being, Great Britain says, no, we're going to stay out of this. You got yourself into this mess. Looks like everybody's after you. We're just going to stay neutral at this point. And so the next treaty is the Reinsurance Treaty. And this was a secret alliance that happened between the Triple Alliance group, or really was primarily Germany, and Russia. Now this was really a non-binding type of agreement, but it was an effort to make sure that Russia did not team up with France. Germany and Russia really were not going to work well together, but Bismarck wanted to make sure that France had nobody to team up with and that they were isolated all by themselves. And that was part of Bismarck's system in trying to get his way in the central part of Europe. Now, his system's going to break down. Part of that is due to Bismarck losing power. We have Kaiser Wilhelm II. He comes to power and he removes Bismarck from having any more influence on these negotiations and having any more influence in Central Europe. Kaiser Wilhelm was a pretty proud, arrogant leader. He definitely wanted his way. And he allowed the Reinsurance Treaty to expire. And so because of that, it now freed up Russia to go make friends and to make an alliance with anybody they wanted to. And he also continued to kind of poke at Great Britain because of the building up of the German Navy. And so this didn't make England very happy, and it was eventually going to turn England or Great Britain against the Germans and move them from the neutral state into a anti-German state where they were going to team up with France eventually. In 1904, we have the Entente Cordiale, and this is a friendly agreement or friendly understanding between England and France. Notice the name. It's not a treaty per se, but England or Great Britain was becoming more and more fearful of what Germany might do, and so their mindset at this point was that their fear of Germany was greater than their distrust of France. And so they decided, well, France is the better option of the two, and for our own interest as Great Britain, we better make sure that Germany does not become too powerful here. Well, that led them to also begin teaming up with Russia. Because of the fact that Kaiser Wilhelm had allowed the Reinsurance Treaty to expire, Russia was a free agent and they could pick up and make friends with anybody they wanted to. And so Great Britain, France, and Russia signed an agreement here known as the Triple Entente in 1907 that brings the three of them together. And you'll notice that at this point the sides are pretty even. It's 3-on-3. We are ready to roll. Two very distinct sides had been taken at this point, and it's only a matter of time before the tension builds to a point where it cannot stretch any further and it's going to explode into an all-out war.